Hey all, here are OS reviews. Although LED displays are now the norm, back in the 1950s to 1970s, a lot of clocks as well as calculators used a display tech known as Nixie tubes, and they're gas-filled cylinders powered by neon. And although Nixie tubes are definitely not as energy efficient, they're more fragile compared to LED and LCD screens, there's still a sense of coolness in this nostalgic tech of yesteryear. Not to mention that the brightness of these Nixie tubes just make it look a little bit more mysterious, ominous, as it's kind of glowing there in the dark. In more recent years, there's been kind of a revival using more modernized components, which imitates a similar transition effect using simple LEDs, although not quite as bright, since again it's not actual neon lights for all the individual digits, but still looks pretty cool. So today we're taking a look at yet another modern revived example. This one is from Divoom, a company that is more well known for their pixel art displays and also retro style speakers. Most of these are going to be app controlled as well, including this Times Gate that you can use with a smartphone running on iOS or Android to customize. Transition effects that you can push over or draw using the app and then send to the display here. Coming in two colors, both pink as well as silver. And this one retails for around $150, so definitely not cheap, but as more of a desk item, kind of a centerpiece to a setup, it might be worth if you're trying to splurge a little bit more, looking for a unique clock. We have a hard shell box once we lift it out from the back that also has some additional accent work there with the logo, Divoom. And inside of this, we have just the actual Times Gate, and there's also going to be just a quick user manual. So we've got the silver edition here, and we have a acrylic plastic covering up the 5 IPS screens on the inside. There's kind of a dual layer design going on, which are kind of bubbled off, creating the illusion that these are tube lights, and they have 128 by 128 pixels a piece. So a lot of accent work going on with the Divoom logo on the bottom, the feet which are also coated with soft touch rubber, preventing it from sliding around, having some slight articulation and movement to it, and kind of reminds me of an action figure in some sense with all of the little details and accents going on. Pretty good from a presentation perspective, and on the very top we have a few keys including for power, switching between some of the preset animations, as well as kind of turning on and off the backlighting, which we'll see in a moment. The transparent shell also allows it to stay glow in the dark and helps contribute to the futuristic presentation that they're going for here. Here's a quick size comparison with a relatively average sized phone, around 6.5 inches, just to serve as a quick reference. So it's not going to take up too much space on a desk. And plugging it into power, it immediately turns on, allowing us to connect to the companion app just by scanning the QR code here. It's Divoom, the same one used for all their pixel art speakers I've checked out in the past. So one app can control all of these different items. What I will say is that this one does not have a built-in battery, unlike the Divoom Ditto. So if you unplug it from power, it will turn off. But even in this current state, we can see that it is very dazzling and quite eye-catching because of all the various LED work that you can also make out from the kind of windows here on the side. Even the little leg here has a small window there allowing the light to pass through. Plus here on the back where the ribbon cable connects to the LCD screens also has a small LED light, which is RGB. I also like how on the inside the window has kind of these interesting ridges going on. It reminds me of some type of stage from maybe the 90s that it's trying to imitate. It's a very interesting fusion between new and old from a design perspective. Definitely nostalgic, and also on the very top here, the controls are backlit as well, making it easier to see. And going through the setup flow, we're going to tap on the plus icon in the top left-hand corner, as well as add a device. We're going to tap on the Times Gate. We're basically sharing the Wi-Fi password with the Divoom Times Gate over here so it can connect to the internet, allowing us to control it from afar as well as download any software updates. And now the entire thing is rebooting, so the kind of screens here are treated either separately in terms of the animations that you can push over, but it can also be connected together to become one continuous strip, something like this. And as the final loading here completes, we are showing kind of a default watch dial here at the moment, which is called Sci-Fi, but here we've also changed it into another one called Cyberpunk. The middle one, though, is going to be permanently set at the time, as you can tell there, versus it looks like some of the other ones that are randomly cycling through weather information here at the moment, as well as maybe some stock prices. In the companion app here, we are able to customize whether we want it to show cryptocurrency or stock information. And since it's connected to the internet itself, it's able to pull all this information without having to rely on your smartphone. So it can just continually refresh and show the latest data as it is just rolling along there in the background. And on this main page, we can also tap on the three dots to show other settings, including specific stocks. For instance, by default, it's showing the popular tech ones like Apple, Tesla, and Microsoft, but instead we can customize it by searching for a different stock. So up to 5 stocks can be selected. And if we don't like the cyberpunk effect, which is, again, using those yellow backgrounds, we've now changed it to neon, which is a little bit more fun, as you can tell. Kind of reminds me of maybe a billboard in Las Vegas. Continues to show some of the weather status, as well as some of the kind of stock information at a glance. This one is consolidated into this one panel there on the right. And as compared to Cyberpunk, it looks like the neon theme gives you a little bit more customization, including a custom RSS feed. So you can pull in some news information just by using that particular feature, or the similar exchange rate stock cryptocurrency can be tracked, and even a separate one here for a Chinese stock market as well. The next one here called Sci-Fi is kind of the default that we saw there from the beginning. It's showing a blue color font instead. So it's really just a font again, effect that is being changed. Also looks quite cool from a kind of design perspective in this kind of monochrome blue. And there's also an interesting decibel meter by default on this one. And the quality of the IPS LCD screens, I think, are quite satisfactory. They have good viewing angles, so if you're looking at it from different sides, it still seems to preserve the overall quality. Brightness is also more than good enough. That being said, it may not be quite as eye-popping as true neon Nixie tubes, just because all the light there is concentrated onto the wire that is lit up, but overall definitely not bad. One other mode here called Timeless. So this one is instead going to be acting as a social media ticker. So if you have a, for example, YouTube account and you're trying to track information such as the number of subscribers or views, you can tap on that. And we're able to search for specific channels. Let's tap on ours as an example, including even 3 channels that you can track simultaneously, in which it will loop through one at a time. One other setting that we have, by the way, can be used to track specific videos as opposed to an entire channel. So if there's one particular video that you want to take a look at the view count for, as well as maybe the like count, number of comments, you can also use it in this profile instead. But further down below, we have more conventional just watch dials that's only showing the time and date. So for example, this one here, which is going to be really imitating a Nixie tube, I think also looks really cool. And again, the effect is not bad considering it is just a 2D display, which is flat, and you get that sense of a little bit of depth because of that slight domed plastic on top. Some of these other ones are designed for holidays, including Halloween, and also has a countdown for how many days until Halloween rolls along. Similarly, there's one here for Christmas and also New Year's as well that you can pull over. It takes a couple of seconds, though, sometimes for these to download and then gets pushed over to the display kind of one at a time, as you can tell there. Another countdown here for when Christmas will become available. And this one is just ridiculously cute. If you're into kind of anime, manga, it's just these cats that are showing the time. And what's cool is in the Nixie tube mode, you can choose other styles of watch faces or dials as well, just by tapping here, click on select item, and you have all of these different options and icons to choose between as compared to the classic one that we saw there from before. So as another example, this one is more reminiscent of almost the TikTok style. And here's another variant which instead uses more simplified digits, but still in a very modern font. As you can tell, they're almost a minimalist look. Flip style clock that also looks, I think, relatively attractive, as you can tell there, with its simplicity. Final options here include this one called City Time, giving us a snapshot of the different time zones across cities, including London, as well as New York, as you can tell there, also Australia, Sydney, and also Hong Kong. So you can more easily take a glance at how the time differs between these different zones. And obviously these cities, as well as images, can also be changed as well. This one here is called Overall Weather Dial, kind of a weird name, but it shows, I think, the most information, surprisingly. There's the time in the middle, as well as even a sunrise-sunset curve here on the left, in addition to a weather forecast for the next 3 days ahead, as well as the tide information also being shown there on the right. This one here is called Import Figure. Again, kind of a weird name, but it's more of a GIF that will go through different animations, not really showing the time necessarily, but if you just want something more fun or quirky on the desk, you can set it into this profile, and then of course go into a custom mode as well, which allows us to import our own messages, again displaying it on the screens, changing the color as well. So here by default it's just going to say hello Divoom pixel art, but instead let's change it to say something like hello world Pixel OS Tech. Now you can tell that if the words are too long, it's going to get cut off a little bit awkwardly at the end there, so maybe some optimization can still be done in this regard, but you can change again the font as well as the sizing and also the color of what they're being displayed as. They also allow you to save some of these as presets, which they call plans. Again, a little bit of a strange label, but you can set up to quote-unquote 5 plans on the bottom here, basically presets that you can then jump back and forth, and it will instantly go into that particular dial that you've assigned to that preset. Now, the next tab over here on the top is what they're calling a independent display. This is another custom mode which allows you to push 5 different widgets independently to each of these slots that you can then load in. So we're supposed to tap on the slots here to then load in options from the gallery, including options such as a sound visualizer. If we want to use that for the microphones, you can tell it's now been popped over here to the first display. The second slot, we can choose maybe a different option. For instance, this one here is called the Mondrian Pixel Art, so it's inspired by the famous kind of abstract artist, using those tiles to show something very colorful, including the time information on the inside as well. And then everything else, again, we're able to completely change, including this one called Sleeping Kitty, also very cute, so on and so forth. There's tons of different options, in fact thousands, because the Divoom community is actually becoming more and more like a forum as their products pick up a bit more momentum. Folks that create their own images and GIFs are also able to share it for other people to download and reuse. And some final examples here. This one is called the message board, so it shows in kind of a super retro, almost DOS-like interface that you can use to type in a quick message, again, something like hello world, and it's going to show it as a scrolling animation on the display, something that looks like this once it is fully loaded up. So again, tons of these different functions, including stock, as well as almost an infinite amount of different themes for the clock faces that you're able to use and then push over. Otherwise, we can tap on the third tab here on the top to go into controls for the RGB light there on the rear, dimmer as well versus brighter, turn it completely off if we wanted to, so on and so forth. Similarly, all the colors for the RGB lights, again on the back, you can set from the default rainbow gradient into a specific color or shade. So it gives us pretty good customization. Here's a few other transition effects. This one here is called Firefly. That's more of this blue and greenish hue. As you can tell there, compared to kind of the rainbow one that we saw there from earlier. This one here is more of a soft flashing one that will go higher and lower. Or we can change it into other more dramatic colors, other ones which are inspired by even nature that you can set it to. Here's one, by the way, that's called Firework. That's a bit more party-like, cranking up the brightness and it's strobing across the entire strip. So in a way, it also reminds me of something like a mechanical keyboard with all of the different preset RGB animations that you can set it into or turn it completely off. So earlier, all of these options were underneath the device tab, but we can also go into the middle section, which is for community, where you can find even more custom artwork shared by other folks, including this blinking eye, for example, that you can tap on and to then send over to the display, as you can tell. Sorted by various categories, including for cartoon artwork, as well as maybe by fruit, by emoji, creative, by different seasons, so on and so forth. You're bound to find something that is relatively fun and creative, including a tab here for dad. So this might be a Father's Day tab. Similarly, you can find one for Mother's Day, as well as other birthday occasions. So tabs here, including the design, allow us to visualize all of the individual pixels on the screen, which we can then use to draw and doodle over and then push over, as you can tell there, just a moment later. So you can treat this as your bulletin board for drawing, doodling, sketching out a quick note, and then sending over to the device, which is actually quite neat. Again, color, as well as you can even create your own stop motion animation by stitching together multiple frames, and then it will kind of play over it in a loop, similar to a short GIF. Other ones here, though, including a countdown timer, as well as a stopwatch, and even a scoreboard. We're able to still see the time here on the left side, as well as the stopwatch here on the right in terms of seconds which have been elapsed. And by the way, it does have a small speaker built on in that you can use for an alarm clock function that will just give you kind of a quick reminder once it reaches down to 0. So here's a quick example. So there we are. That's basically what it's going to sound like if you're using it as an alarm clock on the side of your bed. Here's also what the digital scoreboard mode looks like. The time is still being shown in the middle, but you can also increase or decrease scores from player 1 and 2 here on the side. That being said, there are two features technically missing here compared to the Divoom Ditto and other pixel art speakers. One of them is you aren't able to play back some mini games on this model. So on those, you had options like Pong, for instance, that you control using your phone as the remote, and this acted as a small display. But perhaps that's because it's segmented into too many parts, so the UI is harder to figure out, but it is technically one missing feature here. Again, the built-in speaker you can't really use for playing back music, so that is maybe the only missing feature that would have been cool to have added on, but it is what it is. Last but not least, you can also turn the entire clock on and off from the main page here, as well as go into more advanced system settings that allows us to change a auto shutdown timer. For example, if you want to turn off at midnight when you're sleeping and then waking up at some later time, you can customize that, as well as go into a rotation mode, which allows it to automatically flip through some of the preset profiles, some of your favorite dials, for example, after a couple of seconds. So that is more or less it as far as our hands-on look at the Divoom Times Gate. Out of all the modernized versions of the Nixie tube clock, which are, I guess, inspired by the design, not having real Nixie tubes, this one is definitely the most fully featured when it comes to customization because of the Divoom app, adding to the collection of just unique display-type products from Divoom that we've seen on our channel. You can check out more details if interested in the links down below, as well as our coverage on other Nixie tube-esque clocks. But for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the Divoom Times Gate.